Hey Computer, Play About Bees podcast.
Well, hello, everybody. We're back again with more about bees, culture, and curiosity with Ron Miksha and...
Bidzina Mosiashvili.
Say it again.
Bidzina Mosiashvili.
Do you always say that slowly? Bidzina? Is that the correct Georgian pronunciation?
No, it's not. But I don't want to get into it. We talked too much about my name in the other episode.
I love it. I love it. I think everybody now knows where the state of Georgia isn't.
Yeah.
I hope so. I'm doing a little dent in that.
Bidzina, what are we doing today?
Today we will be talking about a very fancy idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, beekeepers are all filled with fancy ideas, but...
And when you say we, let's say who we are.
Right. Let's introduce the special guest today. Herman, please, would you like to
Sure.
do a little... sorry, I kind of messed that.
No, just keep
it's all
going.
good.
This
Okay.
is great.
Yeah,
This is
for sure, it's casual.
just your normal way of introducing people.
Well, me and him have a little bit of a history.
You do?
We know each other.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wouldn't have invited you if I had known that there's a history going on here.
No, the history is the first time I've ever...
Yeah.
My first year beekeeping, Herman actually went out in a refrigerated trailer out to BC, and he picked up my bees for me.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Because I was concerned with doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's just that kind of guy.
It was a great trip too, Bidzina. We drove all night back from Lumbee, BC.
Wow.
And with a load of bees, 20 nukes for you, as I recall. 24 nukes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then some for myself and for some other buddies in the bee club. But it was a great trip.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And that was an introduction to the beekeeping world that really kind of
That's your introduction to the beekeeping world, but I want to hear Herman's introduction to the beekeeping world.
Right.
Yeah.
So Herman Van Reekum.
Herman Van Reekum. Yes, thanks guys for having me here today. So my introduction goes back a long ways. I've lived in Calgary since I was about 4 years old. My parents were immigrants from Holland, and my mom became a beekeeper when I was maybe 8 years old here in Calgary. And so she had a mentor. I'll never forget, his name was Claude Cameron, and he lived down near Western Canada High School, and he had a house there that he had his extractor in the garage, kind of a classic old extractor. And he had his apiary down in De Winton, just off the highway, and the house is still there. It's a lot older now, but I just have really good memories of going out there with my mom and Mr. Cameron and our family and looking after bees. And, my mom paid me 25 cents to paint a super and, delivering honey to the people in the neighborhood that she sold honey to.
So you thought there was big money
I
in
thought
bees.
there was big money in bees, Ron. Yeah, that was kind of where that idea came from.
Yeah.
And so fast forward to a lot of years, I was in a business that I sold in 2014 to a large American firm, and I had a IT fellow who's also a good friend, Bill Raymond, and I think Bill is probably well known to people in this audience. But Bill was my IT guy, and I sold the company, and I called Bill into my office and I said, "We don't have a job for you anymore, Bill, because we've sold the company and they've got their own IT department." And he said, "Well, that's no problem because I'm going to start beekeeping again." So Bill had been a beekeeper for years, and in Edmonton, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to join you." And so that was just 10 years ago, and we've had lots of adventures since then, and including going out to BC to pick up nukes for Bidzina and for other folks. And so we've just had so much fun.
Bill is actually the one that introduced me to Herman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a real connector that way.
Well, we're going to get Bill on here one day, huh?
Yeah, he's great.
He would be very interesting to talk to.
Yeah, but meanwhile,
Yeah.
we've got the second best. We've got Herman. And Herman, we're really glad that you could be in here today. And we have something special that we want you to talk about, and that's your BeeCube project that you've got going on.
And when I said earlier, beekeepers are full of fancy ideas, I wanted to end it with, but Herman is actually one of the few beekeepers that has actually come to fruition with some of his ideas and actually created
Oh,
create
yeah.
a physical product.
You're right. Ideas are sometimes relatively easy to come
Yeah.
by. It's the execution. That's
Yeah.
the part that most people just don't get around to.
Right.
Yeah, that's for sure. So you're executing.
I am. Thanks for that, Bazina. Yeah, for sure. So this idea goes back several years. So like many hobbyist beekeepers, I was tired of losing beehives in the spring, coming out to see my bees had perished during the winter. And I just kept thinking maybe there's other ways of doing beekeeping. And I have some connection with Europe, and so I got connected to a Dutch beekeeper who in turn, this was during COVID when everybody was having Zoom meetings and things, so he in turn connected me to a company in Israel that he'd heard about called BeeWise. And BeeWise developed a fantastic product. It's called a bee home, and it's a robotic beekeeping system. So it has multiple hives in a small container-like building. And I reached out to the CEO of BeeWise, Sar Safra, and I said, can we import these to Canada? Like, what would it take? And I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, so I think maybe there's an opportunity here. And Sar was, we could do this, but I'm not sure how they're going to make it through the Canadian winters. And so Sar suggested that maybe what we could do is send a few up to Canada, maybe 5, and we maybe get some support from the government. And beekeepers, we could test them and see what we need to adapt. And so I spent the next 2 years trying to make that happen. So what I did was I reached out to the Alberta Beekeepers Commission, Connie Phillips, who was super helpful, amazing. And we did that. We got a grant from ARDAR, which is a provincial agency that provides grants stands for Results-Driven Agricultural Research. And so we got some money to bring some systems up to Canada, and that took about 2 years. And in the meantime,
when you say bring some systems up to Canada, you're dealing I've been to BeeWise's operation
I know,
in
for
Israel.
Sure,
fantastic organization, and we could talk for quite a while about
sure.
them, and maybe we will.
Yeah.
But I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
We don't usually think of going from Israel to Canada as going up.
Yes.
So these came out of
California. Yeah,
right.
For sure, Ron. Yeah. So BeeWise's mission at that time was focused very much on the almond pollination. And they had systems in California. And actually, myself and somebody else from the Alberta Beekeepers Commission went down to California. We met with BeeWise people, and we saw the system at work. And so the idea was that we'd bring 5 of them up to Alberta, and we had some beekeepers, some commercial beekeepers, who volunteered to test the systems. And so anyway, long story short, we spent all this time and effort and got a lot of support for it, but BeeWise, for their own reasons, decided not to proceed with sending their equipment up to Canada. They didn't want to go ahead with it.
Mm-hmm.
They had.
May I ask you, when you did receive their units, these were the ones with the robot inside.
Yeah.
So for those who don't really know the system, you can correct me if I get parts of this wrong.
Yeah.
But what I saw of their outfit in Israel, and I'll back up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Their outfit in Israel was founded by 3 people. You met one of them. I met a different one of the founders. He was actually not a beekeeper. He was a mathematician with a PhD.
Yeah. Wow.
And that was necessary because it's such a high-tech organization.
Yeah.
When I pulled into their shop, it was at, I think, I'm going to get the name wrong, but Biet.
Israel.
It is a kibbutz.
Yeah.
And I was really pleased. They had me. I met some other people there at the kibbutz, and we went for lunch. And then and it was really funny. We're sitting at a table over by the window, looking out all these beautiful trees and the scenery and everything. I mean, Israel is an amazing country. I like Israel quite a lot. I visited there, and really, my heart goes out to all the people involved in the Middle East. But after that attack on October 7 last year, and I was there just a couple months before that, visiting these guys. Visiting these guys at the there's another name, Biet something. Man, my memory's getting poor. But it's a kibbutz, and we're sitting there at this table looking out, and a whole bunch of guys came in with black T-shirts on, and they sit down at a couple of other tables. And one of the guys I'm with whispers to me, he goes, "Those guys are the ones that we're going to go see pretty soon. They're from Beewise."
Oh, wow.
So the whole organization was right there at a kibbutz, and it was pulling into their shop area, which was a little separate from the housing on this kibbutz. It was amazing because there were 80 cars. I counted them in the parking lot.
Wow. Yeah.
Like 80 vehicles were parked there.
That's a lot of staff.
So those were the employees of Beewise?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
They have. I think they have just over 70 researchers.
All of that, I'm sure. They've got a lot of money behind them.
And the whole place was like a fancy Google campus practically.
Well, that's
Have you
right.
been to their outfit in Israel?
I didn't. I visited them in California, so I didn't get a chance to get to Israel. That was next on the plan. That was going to be next.
I think you would still like to see that.
I'd love to, yeah.
Because there's a lot of tech involved in their system.
Right, and that's what we're
Software.
just going to get into. So coming into their shop, their area there, balloons and candy sitting around, and people on computers everywhere you look.
Interesting.
And I had a nice conversation with the guy with the PhD in mathematics. I can't remember his name right now, but we had a great conversation about their philosophy, their idea, what they were trying to accomplish, and then he took me and my friends around to actually see the construction of these machines, of these boxes.
Yeah.
And it was just so incredibly amazing, the sophisticated equipment and electronics and computer power and the robot. When we say robot, we're not talking about the original Czech idea of a humanoid that did chores for you. We're talking about a machine on a stick that thinks for itself and pulls the combs out one at a time, looks at them, and if there's honey, it turns around and sticks it into an extractor, a small round extractor off to the side, inside of this room. Yeah. And the room is roughly, I know people who are watching aren't going to be able to really get a full appreciation, but the room we're in right now is roughly the size.
Roughly the size of the BeeCube.
Roughly the size of the
if you're
BeeCube.
looking at that picture,
I just have their leadership team here.
Yes.
So we got Sar there, you mentioned.
That's when you met.
Is any of these guys that I thought this guy.
I met Ilya in California.
Okay.
Yeah, Ilya Rutzner.
But anyways, while we're on this topic, I just have a quick short video of Beewise and how they work.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll put this up there as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's no audio.
No, this is great. This is really good. It
Yeah,
helps
it
people
is,
get a feel for what the whole thing looks like.
So it is quite big. It's almost like a large shed.
To sort of part of my story is that during the time when we were about to execute on, so we hadn't actually brought any systems to Canada. That was going to be next.
Right.
But they discontinued that line, as far as I know, and they built a smaller version.
Oh,
of it,
yeah.
I guess, Ron,
The
about
one
half the
they-
size or something.
They had to because what I was looking
Yeah.
at weighed a couple of tons, and you couldn't move it with a forklift.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So how do you get in and out of? Plus, a lot of people who would want pollination don't want to have 24 colonies sitting in one spot. They like to have them spread out a little more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just like a little short video.
Yeah, Betsy, that's great. That's great.
let's
We
go.
will have that up.
Yeah.
And so we're getting pretty sidetracked here.
Yeah.
But what I did want to ask was, and I think you've answered it already, is that none of these units actually went through winter in Canada.
No,
So their idea that they probably wouldn't do well in our winters was never
It's
tested.
still unproven,
Yeah,
for sure,
okay.
yeah. And so I was pretty, they decided not to proceed for their own reasons. They just didn't have the capacity to support an operation in Canada, and I respect that completely. I'm still hoping that someday that we will be able to do something with them here because they are remarkable. So when that ended, that was end of 2022, so 23. People that I was working with said, well, we could do something similar in Canada, couldn't we? Like, we've got people who are experts on AI and sort of beekeeping and all these things. Why don't we try it here? And so that was kind of the premise. And so I felt like I put so much time and effort into it. I thought, I've got to keep going at some level. And spent most of the 2023 thinking about designing a BeeCube. I came up with the name BeeCube for, and so I was actually walking through a parking lot, and I walked beside a Nissan Cube, and I thought, oh, BeeCube, that could work. But anyway, that was kind of the branding that I had some students at the University of Alberta. I was really fortunate to get some support through a capstone program at the U of A, and had a fantastic experience with these young engineering students as they helped me design.
Oh, but they were excited.
They were so excited.
Yeah.
And then we had another team that worked on the electronics ideas and the sensor ideas. And, the idea of saving bees was just so inspirational for them. They were all last year, fourth year engineering students. And that was a great experience. And so, and also went through a startup incubator type program here. I've run businesses all my life, but not startups or tech startups are a field of their own. I think as Benzina knows just as better than I do. But
they're a very interesting community of people. And
I'm
genuinely when I say interesting, I don't mean to be like condescending or something. It's just it is.
No, you don't sound condescending.
No,
not as much as you should be.
But no, I haven't officially started a startup, but
yeah,
I've been in the community for a little bit.
And I'm, I think I was in that world because that was kind of part of the idea. It was so I spent a lot of 2023 basically trying to raise money and thinking about how to build it. 2024, so earlier this year, I found a team to build the first one. Some very skilled carpenters, a young couple who had really good ideas about building it with sustainable materials, and so that BeeCube is all
It looks beautiful.
If 50 years from now, it could disintegrate, and I think there's a few pieces that would be left over. But that was one of the values that we put into it.
And that's different from the BeeWise.
It is, yes.
They're mostly plastic and metal.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. And so we built it in a shop down in Millerville, and I was able to get some money together. I had some money of my own, and we had the first one ready by April of this year, and we put it into a field just outside of Strathmore. A friend has an old family farm there, and it was just this fantastic place. It's on the edge of some canola fields, and there's a field of alfalfa right in front of the BeeCube. So, and there's an irrigation canal flowing right beside it. So
it's a good area.
It's a really great spot. Yeah. And then that was April this year. I was able to get some bees from packages from Scandia Honey, and we had 24 packages that we put in one side of the. I could talk a bit more of the configuration anyway, but we put bees in it in April. I bought some other hives from Neil Bertram, and we split those and put those on the other side. So we've got bees on east and west sides of the building, and there's room for 38 hives in there, and we have I think about 35 of them right now full of bees.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a picture up right now of 3 of these units.
It's actually
setting near each other. They're beautiful.
That's actually one. It's just the pictures.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah. You tricked me.
I'm sorry.
No, but you're
Photoshop.
Yeah, what a neat job of photoshopping this one unit. No wonder they all look so similar.
Yeah.
All at different angles. But we're going to eventually go inside of here with you.
Yeah.
But looking at the outside, describe a little bit of what we see here.
Right.
On either one, just pick one of the 3.
Yeah, for sure. So we have it looks like a bit like a shed of some sort, like a chicken shed or something. And the wood that we got, the kids that built it have a mill that they work with out in Radium, BC.
It looks like cedar or something.
I think it's cedar. Yeah, and they stained it with. So it's a stained wood product that they found. Mm-hmm. We have 2 rows of entrances on both sides of the BeeCube. So what you're looking at are different colored There's 2 pieces of wood that are their landing boards for the bees, and there's holes above the landing boards where each hole is an entrance for bees. And we also 3D printed some caps so that if we didn't need to use that entrance, we could just cover it up. And we also built 3D printed some entrance reducers. So those holes are actually pipe. They're plastic pipe. They're pipe that you would use in plumbing, and that was another thing that we did. we this is a prototype, so we did a lot of things.
Version 1.
Version 1. It's
Yeah.
it's the first version, so
Yep.
It's very good for version 1.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean it took a lot of thinking on the fly. Late nights, kind of coming up with how are we going to do this. And so the pipes are actually they're 3-inch plastic pipes that you would use in plumbing, basically for the bees to enter their hives. And it's interesting. We'll get to it later, but you can, if you're inside it, you can pull a hive back, and it's actually on a slide, like a drawer slide, basically.
Why don't I move ahead from this picture? I just love the photograph, and I love your photoshopping job on this to make one look like 3 from different angles, so we can see how it's set up.
So did you get this in with a trailer, or how did you get this in here?
That's a good question. We had it. We have it on a truck, a truck with a tilt deck that had a winch, and so we literally just winched it up on the deck of the truck, and moved it from Millerville out to Strathmore.
Kind of like a tow.
Yeah, a big tow truck,
Yeah,
a tandem axle truck.
Flatbed.
Yeah.
Okay.
The operators were amazing.
I see.
And we just. When we got to the site, we just tilted the deck up, and it just kind of, we anchored it to a tree, and it just kind of pulled off very slowly.
Drove away as quickly as you could.
Yeah. So that it didn't tip over.
There it is. I just want to point out for people who are listening, we've got like 32 countries that people have downloaded the podcast. So we are in Calgary, Alberta, Canada.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
And Millerville is about an hour's drive south of us, roughly.
Yeah.
And it's a smallish town, pretty close to the mountains, gorgeous area.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's where it was assembled.
Yes, and that's where I've had bees for the last 10 years as well. So
Okay.
I've got friends down there that we've got some
Yeah.
acreage, and so
Right.
that's why there. Yes.
And then it was loaded up on this truck, winched onto this tilt bed, probably like a 3-ton,
Yes.
6-wheel truck.
Exactly.
And then hauled over to Strathmore, which is close to where Bedzina has had some bees.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm about 15 minutes away from Strathmore, where my bees are. Yeah.
And Strathmore is to the east, more out into the prairie. So Millerville, think mountains.
Yeah.
And Strathmore, think out in the flats in the prairie.
Yeah.
Although the location I'm in, you get a really nice view of the mountains.
Spectacular.
Are you by Eagle Lake?
No,
Possibly?
we're further east of Eagle Lake.
Okay. That's just the area I'm by
I
a kilometer away from Eagle Lake, Rocky North.
I'm west of Eagle Lake, I should say.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're by the
By the town, literally on the north side of the town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got it in my head. I don't think anybody out there listening is going to have it in their head, but that's okay.
Yeah.
We just wanted
we
to
went a
know
little
that
detail.
we're in Calgary.
Yeah.
At Mount Royal University campus. That's where we're recording from. And this was and you live in Calgary.
I do live in Calgary. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the work was done south in Millerville,
Yeah.
and then it was hauled out to Strathmore. So this box can be moved,
Yep.
hauled around.
We're just about to move it back to Millerville for the
Oh,
winter. Yes,
okay.
that's our plan now. Yes,
And
next
you
week
with the bees.
with the bees. Yes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No crane needed.
I'm hoping not. No crane needed. No, I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to winch it back onto the same
Okay.
truck and move
That's
it over.
right.
Yeah.
If there's no crane needed to get it on and off, that's a really good.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah, that was a problem that BeeWise was facing with their 24 hive units made out of metal and plastic, that those things were so heavy that they were even suggesting that a person would come in with a crane to load in the back of the truck. And I just couldn't picture the economics of hiring a crane. And
Honey's not that expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Yeah, there's not.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyhow, a great idea,
And
a
so
beautiful looking building.
Thank you.
that's-
And the different color landing boards that you can see, my wife painted all those different colors so that the bees would have be able to identify their specific location. And it looks great.
Yep, that helps the bees. We'll talk
Yeah.
more about the outside and how they
Yeah.
find it. But right now, we're going to jump on into the inside, and you have enumerated 12 different features that are pretty important to the design and to the efficiency of this unit. So what we're talking about is a wooden box or shed, basically, but extremely sophisticated, with advanced sensors, temperature controls, and so on the inside. and designed that you can walk into the
Yes.
middle and your hives are on either side of you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So among the things it says here, 8 by 10 by 10 portable design.
Yes.
So
yeah.
what's the significance of that cubicle size, 10 by 10?
So the 8 feet wide is so
8
that it
feet
can fit
wide.
onto a truck quite easily. So that's typically the width of a truck.
Flatbed,
And so the
yep.
flatbed truck. So that was that dimension. 10 feet. We had an idea of how many hives I wanted to put into it, and we kind of laid them out on the floor, some Langstroth boxes, and we said, 10 feet should work. Give us some extra room on the ends for tools and things and that sort of thing.
Right.
And actually, we've made them as long as 12 feet. 10 feet high was also chosen so that we could, again, we laid the boxes on the floor and we stacked them up and we said, 10 feet would be a good height. And inside the BeeCube that we have in Strathmore, we have 2 shelves. So there's actually 2 rows of hives. So each row takes 4, we'll stack up 4 boxes. I'm gesturing with my hands, but 4 boxes, 4 supers high. And so we did that, and then we thought, a 10-foot height works in that kind of configuration. So that's why we chose that
Right.
height.
Right.
And it fits under bridges. And
I was just going to ask that. You don't have to have a crew going ahead of you taking down the power lines.
Yeah, I was nervously following it, but it fit.
Yeah. No, you were fine with that height.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the floor itself inside then, because the next point you have on here are timber skids
Yeah.
for easy relocation. So the floor doesn't sit right on the ground,
No.
but it's raised up a little bit.
It is exactly right. It's the height of a skid. I think that skid is 8 by 10. I was thinking initially some sort of a metal framework to put underneath it. That was expensive. The skids were a lot less expensive, frankly, and it was just as good. And it is off the ground, at least a step essentially.
Right.
So you step up into the BeeCube, and the floor itself is insulated. So we've insulated all the walls, the floor, and the ceiling with a wood fiber insulation. Again, the sort of sustainable product that we sourced. It's a very good form of insulation, and so it's all the sides are insulated as well.
So do you want to talk about the advantage of having the whole unit insulated?
We think it's so passively heated, passively cooled. So the temperature, we don't need a lot of extra help to keep it hot and cool. Now it's going into its first winter, so we will have a heat source available. We will monitor the temperature, but we wanted to have it designed so that in a passive way it would be just fine. The bees would be just fine without us having to intervene very much. I will say that during the really hot weeks in August that we had here in Calgary, we left the door open so that we got some extra flow, some extra ventilation in there.
Right.
Because we just don't know. Like the bees generate their own heat, as we know, and so we just didn't know how hot it would get there, so we left the door open.
Have you tested the R value or the insulation rating on it? What is it?
Testing, I think the builders are fairly confident that it's like an R24.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so this is it's when it's in portable mode, like when you have it just on a site.
Yeah.
It's on a battery, or
Yeah,
is it solar
that's
powered?
a solar panel. So we have the sensor story is a long story, but for this first year, we're going to develop our own sensor system. That's part of what I'm planning to do. But for this first year, we chose a commercial brand of sensors, and they comes with a solar powered battery that powers the cell phone connection to our computers, essentially. So
Right.
that's how that works. So
We'll
solar
come into
powered.
the electronics a
Yeah,
little more
for
detail
sure.
here
You bet.
just
Yeah.
a few minutes.
Yeah.
But I think that was a really good question asked.
Just
Yeah, it
wanted
is,
to.
yeah.
So, but when you take it to your back to Miller, are you going to plug it in somewhere? Or
We
so
are,
there's
yeah.
a place
Yeah.
to just plug it in.
Yeah.
Okay,
and
great.
that's a great question because I just don't want to. This is our first year, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of bees in there, so I just don't want to chance it. So we have a plug-in available, and we will. Yeah. This year.
So here in the Calgary area in Alberta, we had an incredibly warm summer for at least 3 or 4 weeks in a row. We officially set 6 new records for high temperatures. And does that seem to prompt you to want to maybe have some panels that open and a
Yes.
fan in there?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
Ron. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the next ones will have a window that we can easily open and fans for better circulation.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So You already described how you would move it, so why the timber skids are there for easy relocation. Solid insulated construction for ultimate protection. I like those words. So solid insulated construction.
Yeah, I feel like that building will last forever. It's just been so well constructed, and I talked about the insulation, but that was a value. That was, and the young people that built it for me, they'd had a experience building another. It was actually a chicken shed for his sister, so they had some experience with that. They chose some of the same materials, and the same design.
Now, I know this is this is a lot. You've talked to some beekeepers, some commercial beekeepers, and they've kind of come back to you and said economics of it don't really make sense. But have you considered the economics of the time that it takes to load this one box versus loading 32 boxes
That's
individually? Because if it takes them 2 hours to load 32 boxes, and you can do this in 1 hour, and they have 5,000 hives, they might be saving a lot of money there, just in the time of loading and unloading.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of really good questions there. One is sort of the use case for commercial beekeepers, and that's something that I'm still proving. And I think part of the use case will be does it save them labor? Yeah. And I think there's going to be a lot of ways in which we save labor, but maybe there's some extra labor. I know that's something that we need to establish and gain more confidence in the years to come. Okay. Certainly moving it, I feel like that's a labor saving area. I think there's essentially, when I say I think we have 35 hives in there right now, so that's basically an apiary that we can load onto a truck and move quite easily. Yeah,
if you streamline that just really quick, and if you can somehow figure out it, like just winch it on in half an hour and off you go, and you're off to your next location, that would be a really it'd be a no-brainer for me as a commercial. I mean, I'm not a commercial beekeeper, but
and thanks. And I think also one of the things I was going to talk about is that now that we're doing this, there's just been no end of ideas, and maybe you both will have ideas and I welcome them, because one of the ideas is we could put it on a trailer. We could actually mount it on a trailer and leave it mounted on a trailer, and so that will make it even easier. I think to your point, it'd be that much easier, and so that's an option as well.
Yeah, what if the bottom is just it's a trailer itself? Just give it wheels and just leave it as is, or then someone can take it easy as.
That's true. Yeah, for
you
sure.
take the wheels off, it'll just be like a bike. You just take the tires off. Well, now you're just causing so much.
This whole design is so beautiful.
Lock the wheels or something.
It just looks nice.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
It reminded me of similar units that I've seen in the Alps, in Switzerland, particularly Slovenia and Austria. Yeah. In Croatia, I saw what Bidzina just described, and there are wagons that are pulled by trucks, and they're parked in different locations for different floral seasons.
Right. Yeah.
And the colonies, they're operated a lot differently from what you're doing. I don't want to go into detail with that right now, but did you see any reflection of that style?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure, Ron. I would love to go over there. And I've been to Europe. I've not been to those countries. But thank God we have YouTube, so I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I've watched, the Slovenia for sure. That's where my inspiration is, really, the European system of keeping bees in buildings, and it seemed to make a lot of sense.
Right.
There's Russian beekeepers that have some interesting configurations inside their bee homes. Slovenia, there's some beautiful buildings, and they seem to make it an art form there that's lasted for generations, and they just look amazing. So that's definitely the inspiration for what I've done here.
So if it's raining outside, you would be able to go in and then check on your hive? And it's not going to bother? Have you guys did some testing with that?
Absolutely. That was, for me, that was one of the biggest revelations. And, when Bill and I would have coffee thinking and talking about this, and because Bill Raymond helped me a lot, and he's my guru in a lot of this stuff, but we'd have coffee and we'd argue about how many bees there would be flying around inside the BeeCube. Surely the goodness would be upset. And it turns out they're not upset. They don't fly. There's the odd one that'll fly up. And so this spring, I don't know if you remember, but it was quite windy, quite rainy. May was fairly rainy, and
before it turned hot.
Before it turned hot, exactly. And it's an hour away from my house, so I could drive out there. It's almost a different weather system. I thought, it's raining, but I could go into, and I'd be quite comfortable. The bees were comfortable. You take off the tops, you pull the frames. They're not upset. There's no wind that's
Right.
upsetting them, and so the relative calm that I felt as looking after the bees and the bees themselves felt, I think it was a big difference between having normal sort of traditional hives outside, and you wouldn't do that on a windy, rainy, overcast day. It just wouldn't make sense. But yeah,
I saw on your Instagram videos that they are are they 10-frame drawers?
yeah.
We're going to
get
to
pictures of that.
look at that.
Yeah, good question.
But let's, if you want to, we can continue to walk through most of these steps because they give us talking points and ideas that I don't want to miss.
Yeah.
Number 4 then is bear-resistant design for worry-free rural beekeeping.
Yeah, that's a big one actually.
Yeah, and I've had hives destroyed by bears down in Millerville, and it's not great. I'm sure you've all experienced it too, and and I think bears generally are moving into habitated areas here in our part of the world, and so I can't claim that it's completely bear-proof. I mean, a bear can break into your car if you leave some food in your car. But I think it's more resistant for a bear just wandering by. I've talked to actually a bear expert, and he said that, you probably want to still put electric fence around it if you want to be 100% sure, as we do in our other apiaries. So I feel like it's a level of defense against bears. But somebody said to me too that it's probably cattle, cattle or horses or other domestic animals. You could put it in a field with domestic cattle herd or something. There'd be no conflict because they wouldn't be out knocking boxes over or backing, and so I think it's more compatible with other parts of nature, basically.
It is, yes.
Yeah, because nice. I mean, you're saying that in order to be fully protected, you should still get an electric fence. But if let's say you just get this, a good electric fence costs a couple $1,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, somebody suggested you could even there's these electric doormats, solar-powered doormats that a bear steps on. They get a jolt. And
what a great idea.
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to hurt the bear, but you want to teach them that this is not a place they need to be.
Yeah.
And I think that this is almost bear-proof because, every time I've had a yard attacked, the bears tend to be a bit timid and in a hurry, and they'll pick up a box and run with it.
Yeah.
That's, and here, unless they have a bit of an engineering mind, they're not going to really be able to get into the bees that easily. Even once we get inside, once we talk about what it looks like inside, I think that'll become more apparent.
Yeah.
Remote controlled operation. So what do you control remotely?
Well, and that's still somewhat aspirational. So I did have sensors in the first one. And I'm able to look at my laptop and see what's going on in terms of temperature and humidity. Those are the 2 dimensions the data points that we had. But the goal is to be able to control the temperature remotely. And I've got a design that's being done for me right now, and we'll have that by the winter so that we can control the temperature just like a thermostat.
Okay.
Essentially, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. And that could also be involved in the summertime to
cool.
open up the windows, turn the fans on. Yes.
Maybe it's water cooled.
Yeah.
Now, how does bee health relate to this? Because I could see potentially a problem with drift and mites moving from hive to hive.
Yeah.
And but so how do you feel like
good question.
Does this help with some of the disease controls?
I think so. So again, what I'm thinking about is that I can do treatment later in the year and earlier in the year.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm not constrained by what's going on, and if it snows, I can still go there and do treatments. Drift was something that we did notice, and that's so there's this was a very windy location.
Right.
We had a strong north winds, and so we'd see bees drifting from the northern hives. So there's some drift happening. So we're going to make some modifications to make sort of baffles on the sides of the entrances so that we can control the drift somewhat.
Exactly.
So there's things that we can do.
Yep.
So bee health, I think the general observation that I've had is that they're just more comfortable in this hive. So we can get to it, but I sort of called it a brood factory because they just make a lot more. I feel like they make a lot more brood, and I think that's one of the use cases for.
Because you made a bunch of splits, right?
A bunch of
because
splits.
you got packages, and then you made
Yeah,
Yeah.
we split all the hives. And,
Yeah.
for
Which
sure.
packages don't, I don't think it's pretty hard to make splits in the first year with
Right,
packages.
you wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, no, we
split.
split every hive. So that's
With a
the biggest
package,
health
yeah.
indicator that I've seen is that
Right,
is that
certainly would
yeah.
be. And as far as drift is concerned, when I used to raise queens in 3-frame units, all within a 9-frame box.
yeah.
So I put barriers between
Right.
each 3 frames.
Yeah.
And then I put like little flags that were permanent wooden pieces, like
Yeah.
a baffle, like you're
Yeah.
describing.
Yeah.
That seemed to keep the queens coming back to the right spot.
Perfect,
So
yeah.
I'm thinking that
Yeah.
would be something that you would
That's-
find beneficial on there.
Yeah, that's a modification that we'll put in place for sure.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep, I would
Yeah.
think so.
yeah.
And you've got one built, one official
Yes.
physical prototype.
Yeah, I've
Okay.
got 3 more that are ready to be finished.
And do
Yeah.
you mind me
Wow.
asking, like, what cost did one of these to?
Yeah, so yeah, you can ask.
A rough cost.
Yeah, this one I think I put about $40,000 all in with all the bees and
Labor
and
and-
labor and
Yeah.
frames. We bought drawn out frames because we wanted to give them a good head start. We didn't want to have them drawing out comb and then so we spent a lot of money on that.
The drawn out frame thing. Sorry, I don't mean to
Yeah.
go. Is that? Are you buying like what? When people say drawn out frame, like real wax?
They
like
had wax.
artif-
So there were frames that I bought from a commercial beekeeper that have honeycomb already in them. So that they're not just a printed foundation, but they actually had honeycomb. So it just gave the bees a bit of a head start. They didn't have to forage to make the wax, to make the
So
the
are we
drop.
allowed to sell drawn comb frames?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The outfit has to be inspected.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to
yeah.
get
Okay,
You have to
that's
put it with,
provincial approval.
Yeah, for sure.
There has to be approval.
And I bought it from a really reputable commercial beekeeper. And
Because I'm just thinking,
Would
like,
that
I
be
got a
Reese
bunch.
Chandler at Scandia?
No, it wasn't actually. No, it
because
was-
he's also one that
Yeah.
who has provided drawn comb
He
for
has,
a lot
yeah.
of
And I've-
beekeepers in the area.
Yes, yes. This was a beekeeper north of Edmonton, and it was a bit of a road trip, but it was a lot of fun. It was
Sure,
great,
sure, yeah. Okay, so we want to move on here with talking about these 12 points.
Yeah.
And another one is dual solar powered plug-in
Yeah.
HVAC system.
Yeah, so we had the solar powered sensor system on the BeeCube all summer, and that worked great. We had enough power to maintain constant communication with the sensors. And now, as we move it into its winter location in Millerville, we've got a plug-in arranged to just be able to plug it in, so that the heat source will be. Excuse me. It's not.
You could take a sip if you'd like.
Thanks. No, thanks. It's not ideal. What I was thinking is that we would just have solar panels all year round. And I've talked to experts who build solar systems, and they say there's just sometimes where you're just not going to have enough sunlight. If you have if the 3 weeks of minus 30 weather, you just can't rely on it. And so I just can't gamble yet on that.
Right,
on that
and the sun
eventuality.
is
Yeah.
so low in the sky.
Yeah,
at
the
that
sun's,
time.
yeah. So I'm still thinking I'm going to plug it in for this winter.
So
anyway.
this was in a windy area, right? Could you put a windmill on top?
Good. Believe me, I'm thinking about every kind of alternative energy source that I can. Absolutely.
If we combine it all, right, it works. I don't think you could just do solar, wind, and like
Yeah.
if you take, and then you add like some sort of diesel generator,
Yeah,
just
or
for a backup.
or propane power, like
Yeah,
you would with an
something, yeah,
RV, you
yeah.
know, a camper unit. You could
Yeah.
you could have a propane heater. So yeah, there's
Right,
a lot
if
of
you just do
alternatives.
propane, actually, right?
yeah.
That might just a
Yeah.
little.
But you're
propane.
not drawing a lot of electricity
I don't
during
think-
the summer.
No, during the summer, no, it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine.
You had monitors.
I had
and-
monitors inside the building. I knew how hot it was getting, and yeah, it was.
And it was able to communicate with you.
Yes, yeah.
No, well, what was your communication system?
It's the cell phone system. So
Okay.
we had a SIM card in this package, and it just communicated through the cell network
Right.
through this company's website, and then I was able to log on to it. I don't know if I'm allowed to mention commercial products.
Oh
but
yeah, we
I'll-
don't care.
okay.
That's, actually, I think we'd like that. So
Okay.
anytime you want to give a little
Sure.
shout out to people,
Yeah,
that
so Broodminder,
Yeah.
they're sold here in a local bee supply store, and they're great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, so that was their system. That's how we
Yeah.
were able to do it, and it was just off the shelf. It was ready for us to use, and
Right.
it worked really well.
I had about 8 or 10 broodminder, just the scale part,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I found those to be. I was doing some experimental work for the university,
Right.
So I wanted to weigh the colonies constantly to be able to compare them.
Yeah.
And the Worker and Hive, which is an outfit here
Yeah.
in Calgary,
Yeah.
they supplied them to me, and it was really, really appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that is a good company, Broodminder,
Yeah.
for scales. There are others, like I'm not.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Yeah.
Zena and I don't have any advertising at this time
Not yet.
with this. But I think, Herman, I'm actually thinking, since you're so involved in business and had all these different companies and ideas, my thought is rather than promoting bee equipment and suppliers and so on, I'd rather avoid that because of the conflict of interest. And instead, be advertising Ford trucks or, or trips to the Caribbean or,
trips to Slovenia.
Trips to Slovenia, yeah. My grandparents made a trip there.
Did they?
Yeah, from there to here.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Really?
back in like 1910 or so.
Really?
My grandparents, yeah. So two
wow.
of my grandparents were born in Slovenia
Wow.
and moved to North America.
Did they do beekeeping in Slovenia by any chance?
No,
or?
he didn't. He made lots of wine. He had grape vineyards. He had, he farmed with a horse, and even in North America.
Wow.
Like he was
Wow.
quite an entrepreneur in a lot of ways, a lot of different ways. But Slovenia, I've been there. I love that country. It's
Yeah.
beautiful,
I'd love to see it.
gorgeous, safe, clean, easy to get around, and people are incredible there.
Yeah.
And I think every one of them is like, they used to work for a modeling agency at one time, and then they moved to Slovenia. Yeah.
Yeah, they do actually. Yeah, they do say that women there are beautiful.
Isn't there a former first lady who's from
Yeah, I guess she was.
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
she?
that's right. You're right.
Yeah.
No, but to your
Yeah.
point, I think it'd be great to see that. And
Yeah,
I'd
you
be-
would love that. I hope
I-
that you can make that
absolutely.
trip.
Yeah.
And I would have thought part of the $40,000 you spent on this was, to go out scouting and going to
I'll talk
places
to
like
you.
Slovenia.
Yeah, for
and-
sure.
Yeah.
See if we get a grant for that.
Now this is like very big vision thinking, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, could it be possible the BeeCube to be scaled up where it's like a fully integrated beekeeping farm garden thing where like you got bees on the bottom, where the
Yeah.
heat generated from the bees are helping the plants at the top.
That'd
And then
be
there's
so-
a windmill at the top.
Oh, I
And
like
it's like
the-
a
I like
fully
the way you
integrated.
think.
And they
Absolutely-
kind of like
absolutely.
the dead bees fertilize the plants. Like there's a way you could collect all the dead bees and just use
And
as
I
fertilizer.
think you said that at the outset, Bazina's, there's so many ideas and
Right,
there's
yeah.
so much creativity that's possible. And so who's to say you can't do that? I mean,
Yeah.
we've had so many ideas just with this building of things that we could do that I hadn't thought of. And I'm happy to talk about as we as we go through the podcast.
Right.
But who's to say things like that can't work? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
better for you.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah.
Just so we can
good.
just kind of
See ya.
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, this unit accommodates 20 to 32 hives using Langstroth frames.
Right.
I want you to describe those hives. We are going to be looking at some in just a couple of minutes, but I'm thinking that these are not your full double-story deeps with 10 supers on top.
Right, that's for sure. Yeah. So the idea was to have it for at least 20 hives, 20 hives, and the idea, so the basic thought. So the Israeli system, going back to BY's, their frames were not compatible with wooden frames that we all use, wooden plastic frames, and so so a lot of beekeepers were pushing back, like, why do I need to buy new equipment? I just have, and so it was always my idea to have just normal frames being used as in the way beekeepers normally use them, so they can interchange if they want to. And so the idea was originally to have 20 full 10 by 10 frame supers in two sets of 4 rows in this first one. And then I'm happy to talk about what we actually did. So that's possible in this building. You can have 20 and then up to 32 hives, depending how you configure it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I have heard from you
It's okay if you want
that the colonies can build up really well and be split. So I'm wondering if maybe that would be the economic model more than honey production, because, our hives tend to need a lot of space to hold the nectar when it's coming in. And not having 4 or 5 supers on strong colonies is not very beneficial. We want to have them stacked up. But if you're doing things to raise nukes and sell them,
that's exactly what the I think the best use case is for a BeeCube. And so I remember going to one of my first meetings at the Calgary Bee Club. There was a fellow there. I don't know if I ever knew his name, but he said, "I'd rather make bees than make honey." And I didn't understand that. I was new to beekeeping. I thought everybody wants to make honey with bees. I mean, what else? But now,
was he a very animated, intelligent, youngish guy?
Yeah.
That was Andoni Malathopoulos. Anthony.
Probably was,
because that's what he did.
That's him,
for a while up in the Peace River country. Well, Beaver Lodge area, in the northern part of Alberta.
Shout out to Anthony, because that just resonated and stuck with me. So when we actually were putting this BeeCube together, we were talking to, again, Bill Raymond and I, talking to the kids who were making the BeeCube. We thought, well, Bill suggested let's make them 5x5 nuke size boxes rather than having 10 full frames, because that'll be more conducive to making brood. Mm-hmm. And so is our goal to make honey, or is it to make more bees? And we decided at that moment that the goal was to make more bees and to use it as a way, and I've called it a brood factory. So basically for bees to be more comfortable, to more successfully make brood, that the colonies could be split more frequently. And frankly, to either use those splits to create bigger apiaries in one's own operation, or sell them to other beekeepers in the vicinity who might need new colonies. And so those have a value, and that's how beekeepers who use this system could recoup their investment. Mm-hmm. That's the underlying.
They do have a great value in that sense. And then we'll talk a little more later about overwintering, but that would be your other great advantage with the system. Yeah. So yes,
I just want to say, I guess there could be a honey edition of the BeeCube.
There could be,
maybe
for sure.
The brood edition is just there, and then there's a honey, and they work in tandem. Yeah. Where you're taking very strong colonies and just placing them in the honey one, and they're collecting honey. Yeah, while you're creating this brood fact.
Yeah, you can take your new colonies and bring them out to a honey production and make honey. And we did get a lot of honey for sure. You know, it was good, a good year generally. But
so you were making a lot of honey, but we're in a honey place.
We are.
So that's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
But raising and selling nukes or bees out of this would certainly be attractive. But I have one more thought on that, and a third thing that should work really well for you is pollination, because a lot of research has been done that we don't necessarily need big, huge, strong colonies of bees to do good pollinating. What we want is lots of open brood that needs fed, and that forces more worker bees to look for pollen and not nectar.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
So having somewhat not weak colonies, but colonies where there's a higher ratio of foragers looking for pollen than there is for honey.
Okay.
And that would mean colonies with a lot of brood.
Right,
That needs fed. So there is some research in that direction that would suggest it might be difficult to educate the growers that you don't need big, huge colonies of bees, but you want to have colonies that are developing and need to feed brood.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah, it is a bit. You know, if you were the one that owned the orchard or the canola field, you would be thinking, I want to see strong colonies because they have a lot of bees in. But those bees might be just looking for nectar.
Right. Yeah. They're missing the opportunity. Yeah.
That don't happen at the same. It doesn't. So the pollen and nectar don't occur at the same time.
Oh yeah, of course they do. So, but the thing is, if
they're going for nectar, they're not collecting the pollen.
As soon as the queen starts to get restricted because there's so much nectar being stored in the brood nest, then the bees just switch to honey production because there's no brood to feed.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah. Because she hasn't had space to lay anything.
That's right. But as long as there's lots of brood to be fed, then a higher proportion of the bees are going to focus on bringing in pollen. And bees do focus a bit. Like they don't just go out and gather both on every trip. Sometimes they'll just get enough nectar to keep themselves flying and coming back, but they're trip's intention is to bring in as much protein as possible, not as much carbohydrate as possible.
And it could be vice versa. This time they're actually going out to collect all the nectar.
That's
And
right.
They don't care about
That's
any
right.
pollen.
Yeah, as long as they have empty supers on top,
Yeah.
and there's not that much need for pollen. Like,
Then why would you
and-
collect it?
Yeah, and by July, that's the way normally colonies are here.
Yeah. But pollen is still blue in the air.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
So anyhow,
That's yeah.
we actually had some success. My oldest brother basically promoted the idea of using smaller colonies of bees for pollination for apple orchards, and then I continued. I did a few years of apple orchard pollination with bees coming out of Florida.
Wow.
That were splits.
Yeah.
So I would take strong hives, make 3 out of them, and move them up and let them build up on the apple,
Right.
and they would bring in lots of pollen.
Wow.
And we kind of taught the owners, like the orchard or
Yeah,
grove owners,
yeah.
to look at what the bees are bringing in.
Right.
Just stand in front of the hive, and
Watch it, yeah.
if every 3 out of 4 bees are carrying in wads of pollen, then you've got bees out there pollinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that nobody ever tells you.
Yeah,
Well,
for
I don't
sure.
even know how many beekeepers know that.
Yeah, probably not too many.
Not
They
too many, no,
probably
that's-
assume that the stronger the colony is. In California, they do have a tendency to send out inspectors to count the frames of brood. Like that's
Or the when they're doing pollination.
yeah.
verify the effectiveness
Yeah, when they're
of-
doing pollination for almond.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're moving on a little
Okay,
bit with
yeah.
these 12 points. We're up to number 9, and that is advanced sensors for
Yeah.
temperature, humidity, sound, CO2, and weight.
Yeah.
Okay, now obviously sound is going to be something I want to hear about, but all of these, and I'm assuming that Broodminder provided the sensors.
We and again that's somewhat aspirational, but we had temperature and humidity and weight
The first year.
This first year, I am working to develop our own system of sensors, and I've actually got a collaboration going with the University of Lethbridge. There's a team down there in the neurology department.
Is it Be Safe Biotech?
No, it's actually no. I know them, but
yeah.
no. This is they actually. It's I was introduced to them through the IRAP, the federal government that provides department that provides funding for innovation. I've succeeded in getting a grant from them, and they've matched me with a team that has developed sensor-based systems for detecting the health of lab animals. So lab animals, if they don't go into if they're not healthy going into a test, they could skew the results of the test. So they've got a lot of expertise in sensors and in processing the data. So we're going to develop throughout this coming year a system of sensors where we have all of those data points available to us. So the weight, the temperature, humidity, CO2, and the sound
as
and
well.
images as well. We want to capture the images as well. So those are things that we'll work on this coming winters, 24, 25, and have available by next spring.
And then in real time, you'll have all of these.
Yeah.
Plus, you'll have the sound where they're going, "Help me! Help me!"
So
You'll write
they're going. The queen is
Our
gone.
queen is
or something.
gone,
My
yeah.
queen is gone.
Well, they're saying now that with AI, they're going to have the ability to translate animals' noises into actual words.
Well,
so, like,
that's interesting. Yeah.
So these sensors, you're going to put them individual in each hive. So there'll be an individual recorder in each hive.
Yeah.
And then you would be able to see,
Or
number
maybe
24 is
maybe
not
it's a
making
random
any.
sample of the hives. We'll see what makes sense economically and what beekeepers are willing to pay for. But essentially,
Right.
The potential is there to do it in every hive and have them there, and then transmit that information to the beekeeper. And you mentioned AI. That's kind of the ultimate
because if you take the
opportunity.
sound and it can analyze like if someone then goes in like a human and they like, hey, what happened here, right? Like they're just like a spike of noise.
Yeah.
And then they can look at it through the camera footage and they tell the AI what happened there was, I don't know, some wind came through or whatever happened.
Yeah.
And then over and over again, a human trains it. Eventually, it has a data set where then it can just create
That's the
millions of different paths.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, it will translate the language perfectly of the bee sound. Hey, this is like, it'll get a 1-minute recording. It'll give you a summary of what happened in that 1 minute.
That's amazing. I mean, we're so lucky, again, going back to the idea that we're here in Western Canada, we've got a lot of resources available. So there is an organization called AMI, the Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, that helps businesses develop AI for their business. And so they're a resource that we can have. And same with the University of Lethbridge or other universities. So we're in this era of AI, and I think everybody's sort of thinking about what's the opportunity. Right. So that's kind of the opportunity here.
Sorry, just to kind of not beat a dead horse or whatever, but the AI stuff, right? It gets brought up a lot, and people are kind of tired of hearing AI. Mm-hmm. But the reason why it's so big right now, it's because we have the computing power to do it. Like that's it. We just have the computers and the bandwidth and the Wi-Fi capabilities to compute these mass
amounts of information.
Amounts of information, and that was just not possible before. Right. So it is,
and we have the skilled
really
people
like
and we have skilled people. I'd feel a bit delinquent if I didn't mention Jerry Bromanshank down in the University of Montana. And he has been doing research and has been working on recording sounds coming from a beehive.
Yes.
When he was at my house, we took him to the backyard and my son was holding the cell phone up to the colonies to see what kind of registration they would have. So the last I knew, and I donated a little bit of money to Jerry.
You did too. I had the app in my phone, and I loved that. That was such a cool idea.
It was a great idea.
It would record your bees and tell you what.
The ultimate the ultimate object was to be able to analyze in real time what your colony is doing. Is it queenless? Is it about to swarm? Is it hungry? Those are the sort of things that he was hoping to be able to extract from the sounds that are being emitted from a beehive. And you can do that without opening the colony. You put your phone, your cell phone.
Just by the entrance?
Yes.
Yeah. No, that is.
I want to connect with him. I think that'd be on this. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think he'd like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He would like that.
I mean, if a cow is in pain and they'll make noise, like why wouldn't bees do it?
Well, and it's interesting. I've been doing some customer discovery, so I've talked to different commercial beekeepers throughout the summer, and one said, "Well, I really want to know. The only thing that matters is the weight of the hives. That's the only thing I really want to know." Another one says, "Well, I just want to know the temperature. So that if they're making brood, they're in the brood zone, if you will." Another one said, I want to hear what they're doing. So everybody's got a different opinion about this, and I'm just trying to canvas as many opinions and build a system that probably would have that flexibility.
That's great.
Maybe a survey.
Pick and choose.
Survey, that'd be good.
I'm sure, there's lots of...
I might be able to help with the survey.
Thanks. That'd be great.
We could send out to the group and
that'd be
club members.
That'd be a great idea, because then...
So what we're talking about now is actually your number 10 on your list, and that's the flexible configuration to meet everybody's individual needs. And you just mentioned some people are interested more in the weight than the humidity or the temperature.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the other thing, is that we've had so many thoughts. So I mentioned earlier we built this system with the first BeeCube with 5/5 configuration, but they could be full hives. We've got 2 shelves of hives, and we'll see the pictures later on, which is very intensive. But we thought we could just have like 1 shelf of hives, and we've gone to the, thinking about that, having them at just a comfortable height, so that if you've got you're my age and your back hurts, you don't have to, it's easy to pick up boxes. And Bill, going back to Bill, he said we could even have a lift system in there. We could lift, all these things are possible if you start thinking about beekeeping in a place, in a BeeCube. There's customization that's possible, and it's limited by your imagination, I think. I think there's this, and we want to do that. We want to, as people come to us with their ideas, build it for them.
And that customization could also include number 11 on your list, optimized for successful overwintering and early splits.
Yeah.
So you did mention that the heat is good, and that you were starting you could probably start packages in March in there.
I would think so, that's the goal, for sure. Actually, one of the big use cases that was suggested to me, Dr. Olav Ruppel, he's a professor at the University of Alberta, and he heard what I was doing. He said, well, we could really use this to overwinter queens at scale, so that we could have not just one queen hive, but we could have queen banks and have the queens together in hives and hopefully get more of them through the winter.
Right.
And that's being done. You've probably heard about there's a Shelley Hoover, professor at University of Lethbridge, did it, and I think she had like a 17% success rate or something. There's a professor, Pierre Giovanizzi, I'm pronouncing his name right. He's in Laval University, and he has done it, and he's published the papers on this where he's got like a 70% success rate. So that's something that we're going to do this winter, is try to overwinter queens at scale. I've applied for some funding. If I get it, then it's almost getting later in the year. But I'm hoping that we will be able to do that at some level.
What we have
test the idea.
seen ourselves is that if you have a bank and you put, say, 60 queens in the bank and you've got enough bees to keep it all warm and they're all well fed, usually, typically, in ideal conditions, let's say Florida, for example,
right.
You expect to lose about 10% every month.
A month, okay.
Yeah, so you're down to 90, and then you're down to 81%, surviving, and then maybe 70%.
Yeah.
So every month you're losing 10% of whatever was left.
Yeah.
But what you really have a big concern for is whether or not those queens will be
useful.
Yes. You've got 50%, or in the case of the Laval University's results, is 70%. Are they going to be as viable as newer ones?
Yeah.
However, I think there's a real opportunity there. That we could raise queens fairly easily here all summer long, and
absolutely.
then have
that's
them
the
prepared
other
for
use case.
for next spring early.
Yeah, absolutely, Ron.
What do you guys think about the use case for hobby beekeepers that kind of like want to rent a storage for their bees?
Yeah,
they just not even rent or for winter. They just have a little spot in the BeeCube and they pay for it, beehive and their rent fee.
I hadn't thought about that, but it's probably it's definitely possible. We could definitely.
It should be possible.
Yeah,
it might be more. You might make more money from one BeeCube.
Yeah,
if you get like 40 people to like
store their hives.
I think one way you could test whether that sounds like a viable idea economically is to see whether any of the commercial beekeepers who already are wintering in these huge sheds have allocated any space to outside individuals.
Oh, right. If they're doing the same thing.
Right. If they're not doing the same thing, there's probably no money in it.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But if they're already doing it, then there probably is an opportunity.
Well, I'm kind of also thinking about new beekeepers that don't have any land, but they want to have bees put somewhere.
Yeah.
And they might be willing to pay a little more money than a more experienced beekeeper. So you offer this.
Oh, there's just so many.
There's so many ideas. I welcome all the ideas.
Our number 12 we've just mentioned, and that's queen overwintering capabilities. Yeah. And that is something that we've just talked about.
For sure.
And that covers 12 of the main features or points in design and also in the utility of this Swiss transplant.
Yep.
Let's go on another step here. We have more pictures that we can describe and talk about. And what we're looking at here is a gorgeous photograph of somewhere on the prairies in Western Canada, Alberta, and I can see the BeeCube set up among some trees and just absolutely gorgeous countryside, green grass and water in the distance and a big sky, and some poor person carrying something up to the unit. Yeah. Now, tell me why you made somebody carry. That might be you.
That's me.
That's
you.
Yes. Okay. Tell me why you didn't just drive up close to it.
Well, thanks, Ron. Yeah, that's actually the site of that. So this is now I think we're in July, and the trees are in full leaf, and the grass is beautiful, and it's a gorgeous setting. It's very peaceful. I just out of respect for the farmer, I'm using his field, and he asked me not to drive through the hay, and so we walked up the canal. There's an irrigation canal right beside the field, and which is fine, like I need the exercise anyway. So we had we were able to bring some supplies close to it, but then carry it in, and we just now the hay has been taken off, and we're able to drive closer, but we just had to respect that it's not our land, and we just needed to be able to. I forgot
to mention. I forgot to ask. when you placed the BeeCube there, were the bees there already?
No.
Or
no.
you placed it afterwards?
We placed it there and then brought the bees in about a week later, I think it was.
And you guys walked them in, or did you also drive
We
that?
drove in, but
Okay.
then he's
that
like,
was not the hay yet.
he's like, this needs to,
Stop,
you need
yeah.
to stop for now. And
I mean,
we
yeah,
respected that all through July and into August, and then now we're able to drive in.
Doing
Especially with
that-
honey, pulling honey, we're like,
Yeah,
it's
that's
pretty heavy stuff.
doing that 24 times.
Yeah, for
Get a
sure.
little,
But it's a
definitely an
great, it's a
exercise for
great
sure.
spot. The only thing, it was a bit windy coming through the trees there, but otherwise it was and that field is alfalfa, so we had a bloom of alfalfa through September, and just
Wasn't it amazing
Oh, it was
this year? It
incredible.
was blooming
Oh,
so late.
yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
We're looking at the outside in this next set of pictures. We're looking at the outside of the BeeCube, and lots of bees flying, lots of bees clustered around, and I think you should describe what we're looking at.
So what we're looking at is the side, and so as I mentioned, each hive has an entrance that is made. There's a hole put into the box that has a PVC pipe inserted in it. It's a pipe that you would use in plumbing in your house or whatever. And there's also a hole through the BeeCube itself, and it's got a sleeve. That's a pipe that's slightly bigger, a half-inch bigger diameter, and so the box. The pipe in the box fits into that sleeve and so the bees are just able to fly through a pipe into their hive, and it's quite easy for them to access and to leave. In the left side picture, you'll see different color plastic little caps, and so those are caps that they're essentially entrance reducers. We 3D printed them just to cut down the amount of air going into the hive, so we just reduced the entrances. In the summer, when it got really hot, we took those reducers out and we just let them created better ventilation.
So in that pipe there, they're normally like to hang out like that?
They do. Yeah, they love it. Yeah, for sure. And this was again prototype. So we thought of everything. So we had these pipes and the entrances, and so we inside the hive, as you'll see inside the BeeKeep, as you'll see later, you can pull the hive back and you can work on it. But then somebody, one of our helpers, said, "Well, what happens to that hole? There's going to be a gap between the hive box itself and the wall." And then he scurried around and he found a longer piece of pipe and screwed it into. And so we actually created an extension to the tunnel. It was one of those things, just thinking on the fly in the moment, and we came up with a solution. And so it's just been great. Yeah.
And how long is this tunnel here? The pipe?
It's about the thickness of the walls, maybe 6 inches, and then going into the box, maybe 8 inches in total.
So they have to travel about 8 inches.
Yeah.
I can't see a wasp making it through past this.
We had wasps, but I didn't see a lot of problems with wasps attacking.
Yeah, that's another. Very good protection there. How are they going to get in?
Yeah.
Do you have any sense of what part of the colony itself was facing that entrance ultimately?
About 3 frames, I think. So three frames would have had direct exposure.
Right, and would those 3 frames have brood right up to it, or honey right up to it?
Brood, typically,
brood close to that entrance. Yes. The 3 frames that were closest to the hole would have been basically perpendicular to the wall.
Yes. We've thought about making them parallel to the wall, and that's that idea that we're thinking about. That could be something that we do in a future version of this. Again, it's a Bill Raymond idea that we're thinking about seriously.
He's great. I imagine he 3D printed your reduced entrance.
He 3D printed all that for me. Yes.
Bill. We got to have Bill on.
We got to have Bill. You got to. But
he's very interesting.
So we've talked about that, and I think that's a great idea. So that if the frames are parallel, there's less air hitting them.
That's right. That's kind of why I was asking.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Next photo. We're inside now.
Yeah.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah.
There was no issue of building up in that pipe of wax or anything.
No. Actually, that's a good question. No, there was nothing.
You can use a thumb-sized plastic tube, like people have done that for observation hives to go to the great outdoors, and the observation hive would be inside of a honey store, for example, and that tube can be really small, and they will not plug it up.
Right, because they got to get out somehow.
That's right.
Yeah, they're not that dumb.
Yeah.
They're not dumb at all.
Not dumb at all. No, that's for sure. Yeah.
So our next photo up, a set of 2 pictures again on this image. We have some people who are holding combs. They're inside now.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're seeing there are the BeeCube. So you can see there's a passageway that's wide enough for a person to walk up and down. There's 2 rows of hives on either side. In this case, we've got 10 colonies on each of these 2 in each row. So there's room there for up to 40. And we're just going through the hives one at a time, and we're just pulling out frames as you do, as to inspect hives. And I just want to give a shout out to these wonderful people that you see in the picture. That's Nazar and Natalia Pushkin. They're here. They immigrated from Ukraine, and they're just passionate beekeepers and real experts. And they've just been so helpful to me. I mean, my knowledge of beekeeping is nothing compared to those 2, and they've just been so great. Anyway, just a shout. They come out on a Sunday afternoon, and we just go through the hives, and he's come up with so many other ideas and expertise that I wouldn't have had otherwise.
Right.
Yeah. So that's him there holding that frame.
And what are they doing? They're inspecting the colonies. They have to open up the back door and slide combs
so
out.
what you can see just beside on the left picture, you can see that the hive is pulled back. So what I said earlier, we've got each of these hives mounted on essentially a drawer slide.
Okay.
So it's just like opening a drawer in your kitchen. You can just pull it back, and then the hive is now in the middle of that passageway, and you lift the lid off and start pulling the frames out and just looking at the frames. So that's what we're doing there, is we're just looking for brood, essentially.
The brood looks good,
It
by
looks
the
great,
way.
yeah, absolutely. And we just had that over and over again. Yes, and so in an afternoon, we could go through all of those hives and go through and inspect for brood and look for queens and all of that sort of stuff. And
Kind of just blinked out there for a sec, but they really look like they know what they're doing.
They really do.
I mean, just looking at the picture, I don't know how much you could get from a picture, but just to describe it, so that's his name?
Nazar. And his wife Natalia. Yeah.
And Nazar's holding up a single frame there. And is that a custom frame that you made?
No, it's a frame that's just a standard frame that we bought, and we just
it's just the angle that
I know.
It looks slightly bigger, but then and then Natalia's in the back there holding another frame.
Yeah.
And so, what is extent of they're like very scientific on the beekeeping end, or just more? They're just very good beekeepers.
Very good beekeepers. Okay. But Nazar, he's a trained veterinarian.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And he's got a certificate in beekeeping as well. So he is very knowledgeable. And Natalia can spot a queen, from a mile away. it's just incredible. Like she's so good at. There's the queen, and okay, we're good.
An ability.
It's a skill that I.
You're still looking for the frame.
Yeah.
I'm in there with you, Herman.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a while for me to find a queen.
It sure does. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful inside. I have a question for you now. Do you always work with the door open?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you considered using a red light inside?
Yes. Yeah.
You have considered.
Yeah.
that.
I've actually got a headlamp there. And I've got it there for that very purpose.
Right.
So I haven't had to do that yet, but it's there if we need to, for sure. Yeah.
And just for people that bees can't see red light.
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But they will see regular light, and if you turn it off, and if they're flying and you turn off the lights, they will just fall to the ground. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah, well, they won't fall. Yeah, they will more or less land as soon as
if they're
they can.
flying in the air. There's
I
guess not fall, land.
Yeah, but it's cramped quarters, so there's 40 hives there. I think I was sort of figuring out that we probably had about 2 million bees in there by the height of the summer. That's just a rough estimate, but
sure.
But it's intense and. It's a confined space, so you want to have the door open and you want to have the ability. So I'm usually helping them, but standing outside. So I'm taking those frames or I'm doing whatever I can to help them. So it's typically 2 people working in there and with an open door.
The hallway there, how much space you got? Like it's about 4 feet.
4 feet, 3 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't stretch your arms out.
Is it hot in there? How do you
It
feel?
can get hot. Yeah, for
Get
sure.
hot?
Yeah, it gets hot.
Because
Yeah.
I watched a video in Switzerland where they had a similar shed formation, and on one side it was just windows.
Okay.
So and then the other side is where the bees were.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if there was no bees on one, it was just one. So one side they could just completely open it up.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't. I'm just thinking. Well, obviously, then you're wasting so much real estate there.
Yeah, and again,
Yeah.
that's an option if somebody wanted that.
Yeah, just the one side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and the other thing is that those drawer slides are expensive, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons for the cost. And we just wanted to try it, but I think
They're like cabinet.
they're cabinet level. They're cabinet strength for
There's a
sure. They'll
shortage.
hold a lot of weight, and
There's a shortage of construction materials, so
Yeah.
you're pretty much taking it.
Yeah, buying it from a home
Like you-
supply store, and they're expensive. So we might just in the next versions just have it on a shelf and just be able to pull it back manually or whatever, and not worry about the slides. But it's
You have to test that. If
Yes,
they
yeah.
stick and they jerk and they bump, then you're going to wish that they did slide more easily.
absolutely, yeah.
I've seen these. I don't know if it's a spray or you put some. It's pretty much a
Yeah.
tape that you put on plywood, and you can slide like construction workers use it for.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a friction. I mean, it's definitely gonna be more, especially when they fill it up with stuff.
Yeah.
When it's empty, it's probably fine, but when
Yeah.
it gets
Well, this is on the outside of the box, so they really shouldn't be out there gumming it up with
I mean like
propolis.
just the weight. But even then, you just have to just pull harder, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, those
Yeah.
are probably a big cost. Yeah, they're just
They were
individual
expensive.
drawer.
Yeah, I won't lie. They're and you can see those angle iron on the roof there. Those are pieces of steel that we use to secure the hives in place. So when we move them, those pieces of steel will be between each hive, so they'll anchor the hives in place. And we just store them at the top of the BeeCube there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you just have to drop them down, put them in the back so they can't slide out on their own.
Yes,
and,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And then the
won't slide
outside,
from
you
side to side.
plug
Yeah.
the holes in the outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's ready to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
have you moved them this fall?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Next week.
Next week sounds good.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're still enjoying very nice weather
It's
up here
amazing,
in Calgary.
for sure.
It's going to go up 24, 25 degrees Sunday.
Oh, right on.
That's kind of nice.
Yeah.
It is, but it's
But you'll see
yeah.
the other thing
Nice.
I mentioned earlier. There's not a lot of bees flying around in there.
I see that.
they're-
yeah.
it's very calm. There are not a lot of agitated bees
Right.
there. It's really nice to work in.
Right. If they didn't like it, that would not be the case.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're sedating them.
Yeah. Smoke. We don't have to use a lot of smoke, actually.
Okay.
That's the other thing. We don't need to. Yeah. So that's just us working. Again, there's 4 of us that day. My son was there helping. And so we're just letting Nazar do his thing, essentially. We're making it.
You got 3 pictures here. So on
Yeah,
the left side,
yeah.
Is that you at the front?
That's my son there.
Oh, no,
I'm standing at the door. That my son's beside me, and that's Nazar. And
Nazar
inside,
in there.
and Natalia. Yeah.
I see. And then the next picture, we have the BeeCube closed up, and then
Yep.
to the right we
Is
have
one of our friends who
One of the friends,
who
okay.
just loves beekeeping, and she was thrilled to have some wax to show her grandchildren. But
people love that wax. stuff. They're like, I
absolutely, yeah,
gotta,
for sure.
please let me take it. And
Well,
they're like,
one of the
"It's
things
just
that-
beeswax.
Yeah,
but
you'll see that there's some guy wires there on the sides of the building.
Yes.
We just had those. I was paranoid that something bad, like a wind would blow through and knock it over. It didn't happen. It's too heavy. It's not going to blow over. But we had these guy wires on the side of it just to anchor it
just so you
firmly in place.
Just so you could sleep better.
So I
at
could
night.
sleep better at
Yeah,
night.
yeah.
Exactly.
So the first picture on the left in this new series that we have
Yeah.
up right now, we can see the unit actually slid out from its normal
Yes,
spot.
yes.
Now this is where you would want that extension for
Yes.
the entrance
Yeah.
because otherwise you'd have a hole there and
Yeah.
the bees would still be coming in and
Yeah.
they'd be getting
Lost.
smashed when
Yeah.
you put the thing back
exactly,
in.
Ron.
oh, that black thing at the top, little.
No, that's the cell. But you can see by Nazar's feet there that there's a drawer that's pulled out there. And so that's the hive that's been pulled out. So before we pull it out, we just go around the side and we screw that pipe into the wall, into the pipe. It just screws in just like a piece of plumbing.
Yes.
We do that, and then we pull the hive back.
Okay.
And it creates a continuous tunnel for them to exit from. Yeah.
Have you checked the overall weight of the hive before the bees were in it?
No, not yet. No, that's to come for sure. But I'd get that sort of
Is there maybe
baseline
a rough estimate? Maybe 1,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds, without bees and honey and stuff.
I'd say about 1,000 pounds.
Okay. So you get 5-6 guys to
No kidding.
lift it up on each
it's
corner.
gonna be heavy, for sure.
If you really wanted to.
I'm thinking 8 or 10 guys.
Yeah,
have
for
to
sure.
have 1,000 pounds or 1,500 pounds.
Well, eight, yeah. Yeah, we are 100 pounds, 125 pounds.
Yeah, it's heavy. It's heavy, and it's not going to tip over. Here's another. Yeah.
Now, I'm a little confused about the next picture that we put up. It looks very intriguing. It looks like it's from the 23rd century or something.
So this is an early picture. This is where I mentioned earlier that we have these pieces of steel, these angle iron pieces that we put in there between each hive, and then we pin it in place so that reinforces the boxes themselves. So when we move it, we'll have those in place, and so the hives can't tip over. So they'll be anchored in place very strongly, and the bees will be very safe as we move it. They can't fall forward or tip from side to side.
There are locks on the drawer.
Yeah.
The way it's built, I'm thinking that when you move it, you're moving it so that the frames going down the highway are perpendicular to the highway itself instead of parallel.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if they were parallel.
It would be. That's a good point. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
You hit the brakes really hard and the combs
Yeah.
bump each other. And
Yeah.
So I guess you would have to place it.
Yeah, I think that's another great argument for having a parallel structure.
Right.
You could
And-
turn it around,
and
but then it
even
would be
when
an
you're-
oversized load.
Yeah.
Well, you design it just slightly differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to comment on the woodworking and just the general design. Those folks down there in Millerville did a great
They
job.
did.
It's
They really
beautiful
did. Yeah,
work.
and just a wonderful couple who work together and do a lot of
beautiful.
thoughtful.
Well, they're cabinet makers.
Yeah,
aren't they?
absolutely.
They really know
yeah.
what they're
They
doing.
really did know what they're doing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Now we're inside again, and the previous picture showed the lockdown position for moving, but now we're showing some real live work going on in this picture.
Yeah, what you'll see is we build our own boxes, and those are they're probably not as robust as your normal beekeeping equipment that's meant to be outside. They didn't have to be,
Right.
And so those boxes are quite fine. We built it so that they can be inset. There's a bit of a lip on, so basically they're interlocking essentially.
That's
so you
pretty good.
You
That's
can
probably-
interlock them, but still just with a hive tool you can just sort of pry them apart very easily, and you can see on the
No screws needed.
no
nothing like-
screws.
Oh wow.
No,
okay,
they
great.
just sit together. They just interlock nicely together.
That's great.
Like a dovetail, or what? What do you mean by? Is there
what's an
just
analogy?
More like a
a-
rabbit joint.
Yeah.
just a one little one?
Yeah, it's like if it's 3/8 of an inch, there's an inset maybe half the distance, and then a lip, so that the two boxes just kind of fit snugly together.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a friction fit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
and you can see there's a black plug on the one box there that that right there. Yeah, so that's the each box has one of those. So you just take the end off of it, and that's what goes into the wall. So into the sleeve that's built into the wall. So that creates that.
So all boxes have that on top, or like you
All-
guys designed them to have them all like that way, or only the bottom ones?
We built so each hive has two brood deeps, basically deep supers, and two shallows, and so the shallow ones don't have the entrance and exit, but the deeps do.
Oh, I see.
And so
I see
there's a maximum of four hive that it can go. So that's the highest that it'll go. So the two bottom ones have the holes in it, so they're fairly interchangeable. So we can just use whatever one we want to
And
make
it's
a hive.
5 frames, right? Or 4
It's 5 frames, yeah, 5 frames.
Are there 5? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Counting.
They're, you might see 4 in that box there, but they're meant to have 5.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and so they are sandwiched in there pretty good.
Yes. Yeah. But it is standard.
It is,
Langstroth frames.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah,
regular.
and standard boxes, yeah.
Okay. So now we've moved on to
Yeah.
actually see it in action a little bit.
Yeah. So you can see the box pulled out there, and we're just adding a pollen patty, so this would have been in the spring. You can see, if you look closely, you'll see a black stripe. That's the sensor. That's the broodminder sensor.
Mm-hmm.
And then see the box is just
Yeah, it just slipped right in.
slipped right on top there. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And yeah.
Nice craftsmanship.
Yeah, and it's and I think that those ones are 3 high. We had
Just going to ask that. So,
Yeah.
so your entire colony would be a grand total of about 15 frames.
20. Well, so there'd be 2. There's 2 honey supers. Like there's 2 medium supers.
okay.
Yeah. In this case, in this picture, we've just got 1.
Okay.
And we just probably have the one on top with some tin foil on it just to create some extra room and make it easier to work with. Just as you might outside. We just
Yeah.
kept the bees in with foil, and we just had some extra room there
Mhm.
because we had it. Yeah.
And wow, so those drawers, right? So we got like right there's 2 there.
Yep.
And wow, so when you close them and open them, they just
Yeah.
line up perfectly there.
They all line up perfectly.
Wow.
Yeah. It just slides into place, just like a
That's
drawer
yeah,
in your kitchen.
they did a very good job
They
with
did a
that.
great job, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very seamless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
It-
how do you just push on it? It's a
Yeah.
push.
Yeah. It just slides. It just
It push comes out, and
yeah.
then you push, click, it closes.
closes. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
you got the advanced one too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah. And that's why those drawer slides. I think it's worth the cost.
And sorry, just
I
to
think you need it. Actually.
Yeah.
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 to build off of what Ron was saying. So the max they can go up to is 20 frames.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
So
20
5 per box, but it's just as easy to have a 10 frame and just to design it that way. It's just a change in design and change in purpose potentially. But and I think the parallel system could work the same. You know.
Yeah.
If you
Just
were
turn
to
it
go, I mean, I know you can't go too high just with the delivery and stuff, but would it be possible to have a 40 frame?
You probably could. Yeah.
And would
Yeah.
that affect them, or that's something
Or-
that they?
You know, what a beekeeper could do is not have that second shelf. We just chose to do that because we wanted to make it as intensive as we could. But you don't need to have that second. You'd have fewer hives.
Yeah.
But it might be easier to work with, and you could probably go higher.
Yeah.
You know, you could
And you
have another.
wouldn't really.
Another concept to consider
Yeah.
is Neil Bertram usually runs nukes on the bottom,
Yeah.
and then he uses standard
Yeah.
with supers on top.
Yes.
So I could see that easily working here,
Yeah.
where you would have 2 colonies next to each other,
And then
and they
There's a
could
queen
be
excluder.
they could be double height, and then
Double-
the queen
queen
excluder, on
excluder,
each,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then a full width super
Yeah,
stacked
yeah.
on top of that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yes. I've tried that in another apiary, but I hadn't
Yeah,
thought of it.
this
for
might work in
this,
here.
for
Yeah,
here.
it
That's a
might.
great thought.
This is a
Yeah.
perfect design for that. Actually,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
So
they're separated. You could individually open them up, check them up.
Yeah.
So for people who are listening to the podcast, we're watching something that I stole off of the BeeCube website, and it's actually a bit of a GIF from a movie that you guys have posted
Yes,
on your
yeah.
website.
Yeah.
So the website address is beecube.io. So if you just type in, HTTPS www.beecube.io. So beecube.io.
.io. Yes. Yeah.
Which means
And-
input and output.
Is that where that comes from?
Apparently, I/O
Okay.
means input and output.
I would
because
think
you're-
so. Yes.
You input a website and you're getting something out.
Well, that's,
Okay.
yeah, that's good to
It's-
know. Yeah.
I think. Don't quote me on that.
It sounds plausible.
I
So
believe it.
anyhow, I'm just basically inviting people who are
Thank you,
listening
yeah.
to go look there. But on the podcast that you might be downloading from and listening to, you'll find the address also there in the show notes.
Yeah.
So people
Thanks.
can jump over there and take a peek at that.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're kind of wrapping up here. This has been absolutely great. I learned so much, and it's just so interesting to see the different concepts that people have for ways of keeping bees. We're always improving, and at the same time, we kind of go back to the original way that bees are, because as I look at this beautiful cedar planked shed, and I realize that inside of each of these holes, very much as if it were a tree, a cedar tree, the bees tend not to have a very wide nest if they are working in the hollow of a tree, but they go up and up and up.
Right.
Yeah,
That's kind of
yeah,
what I was
yeah.
thinking. They like to do that.
Yeah. So I see, in the most modern of designs, which you have here, I can also see the basic direction that the honeybee should be most content with.
Right.
It's almost
Yeah,
like it's like a giant cedar tree, and you carved it out, and you just put a door on it.
And thanks for saying that, because we made a deliberate choice to use, again, sustainable materials, wooden materials, because that's the comfort. That's as natural as it can be for bees in their natural environment.
Right.
And we could have made it out of metal or whatever, but chose not to do that. And I think we'll try as much as possible to keep that kind of language of building throughout as we develop more of these bee cubes.
Right. There doesn't need to be any plastic parts or much metal. You need a certain small amount.
Yeah, like plastic's very great. I mean, all these things come from nature, right? Rubber, plastic, they all come from nature, but we don't need to go overboard with it.
I wouldn't say they come from nature.
Well, rubber does.
Rubber comes, it does come
Rubber
from trees.
rubber tree,
But if you've ever been to Akron, Ohio, and smelled the tire factories, I mean, they're taking a raw product and they are really cooking it.
I see what you mean, but it's just we don't need to overdo it. But there are great use cases for them, right? For example, well, the PVC pipe. I was thinking, those big drills that they use to make holes out of in rock,
right?
For quarrying. You could get a same almost drill bit, and then do it for get a wood pipe, cedar pipe.
You could,
Get just like and then
and
instead of a PVC, that could just be a wood pipe as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
my friend Bill, going back to Bill, who he's 3D printed some entrances that are more the width of a cell phone, so they're actually about a half an inch wide and about 6 inches long, and that depth as well. And he would prefer to see that than the PVC pipe. So we're probably going to, and maybe that could be more sustainable as well.
That might be. And just talking out loud here, and I might be totally up a tree with this, but I'm thinking that instead of going out for each individual hive, we're working on number 2 on the top and the left-hand side. We're going to close that, and we're going to put in the sleeve extension. Maybe it would be possible to have your outside entrance totally closable by pushing a little cover over the outside hole, and simultaneously that would nudge a door closed on the hole that goes into the hive itself.
Right.
And that should be pretty easy to accomplish. You're pushing on one, and it's sliding the one on the inside, just there, just detached. And then when you want to open, they both open. Because you can totally close the outside for the 20 minutes that you're working, and the bees won't
mind.
No,
sure.
It won't hurt them.
And that's a really good point. And the other thing we've thought about is closing it remotely. If a farmer says, I'm going to be spraying today, and we close, if you can close off your hives.
Yes.
You often don't get that cooperation. We were fortunate there was no spraying happening here. But I think that's part of what we'd like to do, is design a remote.
Oh, that'd be great. There's
closable.
so many places in the world that beekeepers have to constantly put up with. Everything from townships spraying for mosquitoes to farmers who need to get out there and spray their
pesticides.
crops.
Yeah, for sure. So that's definitely something, a design feature that we need to include.
Wow. Well, the only thing missing in this photograph are the mountains in the background, but like Slovenia, here I come. Well, this has been fantastic, and I want to give you an opportunity to cover anything that we missed or anything you'd like to add to your experience of building this. And
No, thank you so much for the opportunity. This has been a wonderful discussion, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I'm hoping that this becomes a more widely used form of beekeeping. That's kind of what I'm going for. Is that other people would be interested in this and perhaps buying them or help in whatever way, using them in whatever way. That's the goal, is to build a business around this kind of beekeeping.
Would you
system.
consider, because beekeepers are always going to steal ideas?
Yeah,
like that's
for
just
sure.
our nature.
Absolutely.
If it
I
works,
stole those ideas somewhere.
well, no, you modified and you
Yes.
built on other.
Yes,
So
yeah.
would you consider creating like blueprints and patterns, and then like consulting to people that they could call you and say, look, I'm down here in the state of Georgia,
yeah.
where we have lots of cedar trees, by the way.
Yeah.
Cypress trees more than cedar.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for us to, download your complete works and
For a little bit of fee, why not?
I hadn't thought of that, but that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I would, because I think fundamentally be collaborative, and so as if there's a business model that we can work
and
around.
some
that
of the
kind idea.
parts, like the sliding tools and so on,
Yeah.
you could be buying in huge quantities, not off of Home Depot,
Right.
but going directly to the manufacturer, the supplier, and
manufacturer,
and getting the stuff there,
Yeah.
and then retailing it to the end users, so they would have everything in one place, so they could contact you and say, look, I'd like to build one of these units for my backyard. So designs, please, and some, consulting from you, and then all the hardware I need, and then there would be very limited shipping costs on your part, something like that.
That's a great idea, Ron.
Just again,
thank you. Yeah,
Would it
I would be all over that. Thank you.
Might be a model.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Once you also have the winter part figured out and you kind of have it perfected, could you also possibly license technology to BeeWise and
BeeWise,
and then get them to build their own, but using the R&D that you've developed?
That's a great idea too. Yeah, for sure.
For a fee or whatever.
I've certainly left the door open with them personally. Like I keep in touch with SAR, and I'm
good.
Yeah, let them know what I'm doing, and if there's any way that I could collaborate with them, it'd be great for sure. Because you're right. I think they could benefit from what we're doing now. And maybe,
because they have a great
way to
team,
combine.
They don't have the capabilities or the willingness to go in the winter area.
Well, they have to be careful how much they stretch themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You have a runway, and
they're very much a technology company.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not exactly. They're more of a tech company than
beekeepers.
Yeah. But they have a team of beekeepers on there, and I don't know.
They collaborate with beekeepers all over Israel and now California too.
Yeah.
Because I've from what I understand, there's also some sort of military aspect involved.
Really?
With the BeeCube.
This is BeeCube.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry.
Ask him if he's got the
Canadian
Canadian
BeeWise,
army behind you there.
Like the IDF has some sort of investment into BeeWise because they are it's a strategic resource to have food and have crops. Like your military needs to be fed, and there has to be some sort of contingency plan.
I've never heard that.
I haven't either, but I mean everything is related.
Yeah,
it's all connected. So,
and they've been remarkably successful at raising money, from what I could tell.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
there's some sort of government contracts that they've been able to acquire that's associated with the military food supply chain grant stuff.
I kind of doubt it, but I mean it's certainly possible.
I mean, what does it even matter?
BeeWise was able to initially raise $120 million to get their startup. And they are really innovative.
Well, Israel is the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, they say.
Sure.
Yeah. There's a lot
Very
of
good.
There's another company called Bee Hero that I watch. I don't know if you've seen them on YouTube, and they've got they're more into. They've got a sensor package. I think it's based on the sound of the hives.
Okay.
And aimed at improving pollination outcomes on standard Langstroth hives. And I don't know them personally, but I think that's what their technology is based on. It's called Bee Hero, another Israeli company.
Yeah. Well,
they got another one there too. Interesting.
Yeah.
I am so happy that we were able to get you in here, Herman.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Appreciate all the information you've shown and how open you are and receptive to innovation, and I wish you all the luck.
Thanks
I think
very much.
It's going to be a great journey for you.
Yeah, it has been, and thank you very much, Ron. It means a lot. I appreciate that. Appreciate that, Bezina, as well.
Yeah.
So, Bezina, I think we should wrap.
Let's wrap up. I think we're 2 minutes away, or about 3 minutes away from breaking the episode record for longest episode.
Are you serious?
Yeah, we're at 144, and I think our last record was 147 or 148.
We're not trying to set a record here. We're going for quality and not quantity.
Well, we got both, though. We got both. In this,
You insist. So, folks, listeners, everybody out there, thank you so much again for tuning in to us. And Bezina, go ahead, take it home.
Yeah, thank you, Herman. And maybe next time when you come back, we can break the record.
Let's go for it.
Let's do it.
Thanks, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.